Hello YouTube, it's Carrie here. Welcome to my channel. If you're new to my channel, make sure to subscribe down below for more updates and informational videos. If you're interested in food and new ways to cook, check out some of the videos in my recipe playlist on my channel for some great meal ideas. In this video, I'm going to explore the 5 biggest myths perpetuated by the food industry. Number 1, that what you see on the label is actually accurate. Most people don't know this, but labels are allowed to be 20% off of what the actual stats are. So when you're spending all that time calculating your macros and being super careful about what you put in your mouth you should know that the industry does not have to be as careful as you. Serving sizes are also used to sort of manipulate the information on a nutritional label. Because of the way that you round up or down, a serving size is not necessarily accurate. If you look at a bottle of nonstick spray, you might see 0 fat per serving. But when you look at the ingredients, what's the first ingredient in that can? It's oil. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a nonstick spray. The serving size is so small that the amount of fat in that fraction of a second spray that nobody ever uses is small enough that they don't have to put it on the label. It doesn't mean that's not what's inside the bottle. Number 2, that the label is an accurate reflection of how the food reacts when it goes inside your body in the form that is created by the food. Labels don't really tell an accurate story because when you're making a nutritional label for a new food, you put in a program the ingredients of the food. It's like building a recipe. The way that they combine and how your body reacts to them when you eat them is not how they would react to individual ingredients. This is extremely important in understanding how food works in our bodies in practical ways. When different ingredients are put together, they're treated differently inside the body. Let me give you some examples. If somebody wants a food that has a high calcium and high iron on the label, they're allowed to do that, and they can put in extra iron and they can put in extra calcium. When you have calcium and iron together, one impedes the absorption of the other. That's why when you take supplements, you're not supposed to take a calcium supplement at the same time as an iron supplement. The label doesn't accurately reflect that. It might say that you have 20% of each of the RDAs of those, but when it goes into your body in the form that it's in that food, it's not going to have that benefit in your body. Another example is protein and sugar. When you package the two together in a food, you have a higher glycemic reaction to that food than each of them separately combined. Another example is when you add fiber to a food, particularly insoluble fiber that doesn't get digested. When it's mixed in with a lot of other food, it affects how that food is absorbed into your bloodstream. Number 3. So number 3 is one of my favorite topics, sugar and sugar substitutes. There's so much more than just sugar and sugar substitutes. In fact, there are a lot of other ingredients in food that mimic the way that sugar reacts in your body. One of these that is found very, very often in processed foods is maltodextrin. Once it's in your body reacts to it in the same way that sugar does. I learned my lesson about maltodextrin the hard way because I do have a very fine line for dumping syndrome due to my weight loss surgery. Because of this, I noticed that certain foods, even though they didn't have sugar in them, were causing dumping syndrome. The ingredient was maltodextrin. This is something we have to look out for. There's a lot of ingredients that are like that. The other thing is sugar substitutes. When your brain thinks it's getting sugar, when you taste something sweet, the brain reacts. Even when you smell something, your body starts to rev up for digestion. And when your brain gets this signal that you've had something sweet and sugar is entering your body reacts to it, whether you actually get that sugar or not. And this can have a multitude of effects. This can affect your blood sugar actually. It can affect the way that your body produces insulin, and that can actually cause the drop in blood sugar and that feeling of hunger later on. So even though you might not be getting sugar in the product, your body is still reacting as if you had. 4. This is going to be a little controversial, especially in the weight loss surgery community. Vitamins. Vitamins don't work as well as actual food that has the same nutrients in it as the vitamins. Our bodies evolved to eat food, not vitamins. When you isolate certain vitamins and elements and put them in your body separately, as opposed to how they come packaged in nature alongside a lot of other ingredients in a food, they react differently. And there are many studies out there that show that even though somebody can be taking vitamins, they're not getting the full benefit of it, or they're getting too much of a benefit. Their body's not absorbing it in the right way. We get vitamin and nutrient content better when it's in actual food that contains it. We need to look for diverse nutrient-dense foods so we cover all of our bases, all of the vitamins and minerals that we need, the micronutrients. All of that stuff comes from a diverse diet, and your body will be able to accept those nutrients much better when they come in as food, not as a pill. All right, we're ready for number 5. What to me is the biggest misconception about food in the food industry and the way that we understand labels. 2 things here. The recommended daily allowances for an average person are likely to not represent you. They are an average, and they apply to very small amount of people when it comes to the overall population. Not all women are the same height. Not all men are the same size either. The food pyramid is the second one. Food pyramid, my plate, whatever you want to call it, it is the government recommendations for how we should eat. These are highly politicized. They are not necessarily an accurate reflection of what is good for you. There is a lot of lobbying involved in how these programs are created. And there's a lot of say from industries that don't necessarily have your best interest in mind. Since the government started telling people how to eat, I would say we have a whole obesity epidemic that grew after these recommendations started, which goes to show that those recommendations are not really appropriate for everybody. They don't take into account differences in lifestyle, differences in cultural heritage, in genetics. They don't take into account differences in activity level. So how can they be appropriate for anyone other than, like I said, a very tiny portion of the population? The other thing that these recommendations fail at is the wisdom of traditional diets. When we have genetics from a certain background, that influences how our bodies react to food. Because when you live in a certain place for a very long period of time, your body adapts to that environment and the food that's in it and the activity level that the average person living in that environment has. This is very obvious in certain populations. The recommendations that they have in Canada for Inuit people are basically the same as for the rest of Canadians living much further south that aren't exposed to an Arctic environment and don't have a traditional diet of a lot of whale fat as being part of their food. Biology doesn't work that way. When you're eating only protein and fat, it's like a very strict keto diet. The way that your body reacts to the food is so different. When you add in carbs and other things on top of that, it changes the way everything reacts in your system. And your system doesn't think it's in the Arctic anymore. And so instead of burning off the fat at night when you're cold, it keeps it as storage because it thinks that you're in an environment where those things are plentiful and you don't need to burn off the fat. You can store it for lean times when there's drought, but drought is something that never comes into effect when you're talking about a traditional diet in the Arctic. These recommendations don't make sense for everybody, and that's why when people eat to the food pyramid or my plate or whatever the government recommendations are, they don't necessarily become healthy. When people from different ethnic backgrounds eat the government recommendations for food, it doesn't affect them in the same way as the model person that barely exists. Traditional diets evolve around both lifestyle and environment. you eat your environment and you participate in your environment within a certain type of lifestyle, and your body adapts to that. And so when you suddenly change that and are eating to a different environment or somebody else's genetic propensities, it doesn't result in the same health outcomes. And this is very important to understand, because we have to tailor our diets to what we do, to how we live our lives and the environment that we live in. I hope this video has helped you understand a little bit more about the ways our food system can manipulate us in terms of trying to influence our decisions in what we buy and what we eat, and maybe open your eyes to some of that manipulation so that you can tailor your diet to a more healthy lifestyle for yourself. See you later.